The man ripped off his clothes, revealing his scarred and mutilated body. The villagers who had just been hurling insults at him were utterly stunned by what they saw. It turned out the man was Badr, the once renowned and formidable great general of the battlefield. After witnessing the horrors of war for many years, his heart, long numbed to slaughter, grew weary of conflict. Finally seeing the nation at peace, he rejected the king's offers of additional fame and fortune, choosing instead a poor but happy life in a remote village. There, with a woman named Ezra, he conceived their child. However, on the night she went into labor, a raging storm raged outside, with howling winds and torrential rain with thunder rumbling. Powerful individuals across the world sensed the immense power about to be born. Even the magical energy in the air became agitated. A rare meteor shower appeared. As the first rays of dawn broke, a child of miracle, an occurrence once in a millennium, was born in a small wooden hut. His name was Sinbad, a man destined from birth to become king. But for now, he was merely a 3-year-old child. On this day, Sinbad secretly stowed away on his father's boat to go fishing. As they finished fishing and prepared to return home, dark clouds suddenly blanketed the sky, followed swiftly by a fierce gale and heavy rain. Sinbad climbed onto his father's shoulders and pointed in a direction for the bewildered man. After rowing that way, the storm indeed calmed shortly after. At that moment, the father sensed that his son possessed some kind of extraordinary power. Soon, Sinbad was already 5 years old. His family kept to themselves but often faced provocations from the villagers, because the country was at war. Originally, just a few years ago, this had been nothing but a poor, small nation. Victory in the war had gradually brought it prosperity, and Badr had repeatedly achieved great feats on the battlefield. He was revered as a hero by the people. But now, battered and weary, he had long grown tired of war. He only wished to live a peaceful life with his wife and child. However, the citizens were not content with this. Having tasted the fruits of victory, they grew even more fanatical about war, and so they began invading other countries. Badr, who refused to participate in the war, was thus blamed by everyone. They even beat him severely. Seeing his injured father lying on the ground, Sinbad felt deeply resentful. He demanded of his father why he hadn't fought back, insisting that he could have easily taken them down if only he had been serious. Badr appeared helpless, but he didn't expect a 5-year-old child to understand him. That evening, the couple sat together discussing their future life. Sinbad suddenly ran back in a panic. He had found an injured man by the river. Darius claimed to be a wandering merchant, washed ashore after a shipwreck. Seeing his kind appearance, Badr kindly took him in to recover at their home. Little did they know this would bring disaster. During his recovery, Darius told Sinbad various stories from overseas every day. This stirred within him a longing for the fantastical world outside. A few days later, Darius had recovered from his injuries. While packing his belongings to leave, several soldiers searching for foreign spies arrived outside the house. Just as they were about to enter to search, Darius grabbed them, drew his sword, and killed all the soldiers. Hearing his mother's scream, Sinbad ran out and saw Darius with eyes bloodshot with fury. Darius was actually an undercover spy. That night, pursued by soldiers and cornered, he had jumped into the river. Darius took Sinbad hostage, demanding the villagers provide food and a boat for his escape. Ezra pleaded with everyone to save her son, but the villagers were utterly remorseless. Seeing their refusal to cooperate, Darius began to lose control. Just then, Badr finally rushed back. He begged Darius to release his son, even swallowing his pride to kneel and plead. He urged Darius to surrender to save his own life, but these words only further provoked Darius, who angrily declared he would never betray his homeland. Seizing the moment with lightning speed, Badr stabbed Darius with his sword and rescued his son. Though he could endure humiliation himself, he would never let his family be harmed. Charged with harboring a foreign spy, Badr was captured by the nation's soldiers. He was not only subjected to brutal torture, but was also to be forcibly sent to the battlefield. Yet even this wasn't enough for the villagers. They directed their anger at Sinbad and Ezra, demanding the entire family leave the village. They even threatened violence against the young child.
Lay a hand on my son. Stay away from my family!
Badr's imposing presence silenced everyone. He then questioned the villagers whether they understood what war truly meant. Badr made them witness it firsthand. He exposed his war-ravaged body, The scars covering his body were proof of his battlefield experience. He was absolutely not a coward who feared death. Yet the villagers, ignorant of war's cruelty, foolishly pushed their own loved ones into the battlefield with their own hands. Badr's words left them speechless. Before leaving, Badr told his son to live strong like a man. He entrusted his mother to Sinbad's protection. Months later, news arrived that Badr had died in battle. However, not even his body was returned. Only his sword was sent back. 9 years passed in the blink of an eye. Sinbad was now a 14-year-old youth, and his adventure had only just begun. Legends speak of towering structures known as dungeons suddenly appearing across the continent. Conquering them grants the power of the jinn residing within. In the future, Sinbad would obtain 7 of these powers. But before that, Sinbad was merely a 14-year-old youth just starting out. On this day, he rescued several merchants from bandits. Although Sinbad did not yet possess jinn power, relying solely on his physical abilities, he knocked down the entire group of bandits. The girls, unsure how to repay him for saving their lives, were offered a solution by Sinbad. He proposed becoming their bodyguard as his job. Bandits ran rampant in this city, and he couldn't bear to see such lovely girls face danger. Unfortunately, they were not heading the same way, so the girls prepared to give him some fruit as thanks. Upon opening the barrel lid, however, they discovered a person hiding inside. This person introduced himself as Yunnan, claiming to be a traveler. Learning Yunnan had nowhere to stay, the warm-hearted Sinbad took him home. By this time, Ezra was gravely ill, her condition looking very grim. Early the next morning, Sinbad got up, prepared breakfast, ate, and hurried out to work. He was now the only man in the household. Although unaware of Yunnan's identity, Ezra sensed he was extraordinary. She entrusted him to offer guidance should her son encounter any difficulties. Immediately after she spoke, bad news arrived. A villager ran to inform them that Sinbad had been captured by the army. The reason was his repeated disregard for conscription orders. Officer Dracon had ordered Sinbad to report within 3 days, but Sinbad refused outright. The conscription was utterly devoid of humanity. One either died in battle or became forced labor. Those who went could forget about returning. Badr and the village men had all met this fate. Sinbad also had a sick mother to care for. He absolutely would not join the army. But the wretched Dracon actually used his mother as a threat. After delivering this ultimatum, the army left the village. Sinbad did not want to implicate his mother. Faced with the dilemma that going or not going meant certain death either way, he believed this corrupt country was beyond saving. Yunnan then pointed out a path for him. Since matters stood thus, he should head to the dungeon. Since Sinbad deemed this nation unfit, he should become king himself and personally transform this country and the world. Yunnan's true identity was actually the legendary great magician. His appearance this time was precisely to guide Sinbad to kingship. On the day Sinbad was born, Yunnan knew that as the child of miracle, he was destined to become the future king. That night, Sinbad bid farewell to his mother. After obtaining his father's personal effects, he stood before the dungeon mentioned by Yunnan and resolutely stepped through its gates. Since learning of its existence, nations had fiercely competed for it, each attempting to seize the mystical power within. However, to date, of the tens of thousands who entered to conquer the dungeon, not a single one had returned alive. But Sinbad was about to change this. Sinbad arrived inside the dungeon. The scenery before him resembled a fairyland, with dragons filling the sky. The imperial army that had entered before him was under attack by these dragons. In the blink of an eye, this elite force of 100 men was completely annihilated. Their leader, Dracon, was also driven into a corner. Just then, a thrown spear from Sinbad pierced a dragon's skull. Led by him, the two temporarily evaded the dragon swarm. But suddenly the next moment, an immense dragon flew overhead and landed, blocking the path. It was the Dragon King of this place, swallowing lesser dragons that displeased it. To advance to the next level, this Dragon King had to be dealt with. At this point, the despicable Dracon haughtily demanded Sinbad become his subordinate, granting him the honorable mission of distracting the Dragon King so Dracon could pass through the gate. He even claimed such a sacrifice would be for the country. Dracon's words made Sinbad grit his teeth in fury. Seeing Sinbad wouldn't comply, Dracon finally went himself. Despite obstacles from fountains and lesser dragons, he maneuvered past the Dragon King to the gate. Yet no matter how he pounded on it or shouted, the gate remained unresponsive. After all, Without the boss defeated, how could one advance to the next level? The noise Dracon made attracted the Dragon King. Facing such a colossal beast, he was paralyzed with fear, losing all fighting spirit. Meanwhile, the Dragon King's energy blast, charging within its mouth, was ready. As a flash of white light erupted, Sinbad surprisingly rescued Dracon. Though arrogant and shameless, Dracon was not evil at heart, merely overly bound by his sense of duty as a soldier. In the not-too-distant future, he would become one of Sinbad's great generals. Now enraged, the Dragon King roared with thunderous fury. Sinbad used the erupting fountains to outwit and slay the Dragon King. Though the Dragon King appeared terrifying, it unexpectedly turned out to be fragile, transforming into Sinbad's experience points with just a single strike. The two took the dropped dragon orb to the gate. After inserting it into the hole, the gate swung open for them amid radiating golden light. Thereafter, they advanced through the levels together. Dracon began to view Sinbad in a new light. He had initially thought Sinbad was a reckless fool, but in reality, Sinbad consistently analyzed their situation calmly. Soon they reached the deepest part of the dungeon. Entering the palace interior, they found it surprisingly plain, containing only a rather distinctive lamp jug. When Sinbad touched it lightly, a powerful surge of lightning burst forth. Instantly, the previously shabby vessels in the room transformed into gold and silver treasures. Immediately after, a gigantic djinn manifested before the two. This djinn symbolized wrath and heroism. It now had to choose one of the two youths to bestow its djinn power upon. Both craved this power. Thus, the djinn proposed they fight each other. Whoever demonstrated greater capability would be chosen as its master. The contest commenced at once. As a soldier, Dracon's swordsmanship was clearly superior. Yet Sinbad directly caught the blade barehanded. Though his swordsmanship couldn't match Dracon's, he was confident in his physical combat skills. With one punch, he rendered Dracon nearly unconscious. At that moment, Dracon remembered the promise he made to the princess before departing. He would conquer the dungeon and return with results. For the sake of his beloved, he could not lose. Drawing on sheer willpower, Dracon steadied himself and continued the fistfight with Sinbad. But in terms of physical combat, he was completely outmatched. Sinbad too had an absolute reason not to lose. The two engaged in an all-out struggle.
I won't lose!
Neither will I!
Ultimately, Sinbad proved superior. He defeated Dracon and secured victory. The djinn acknowledged him and bound itself to his sword. With the activation of a magic circle beneath their feet, upon reopening their eyes, they found themselves outside. Besides gaining djinn power, they were rewarded with a heap of gold and silver treasures. Yet Imperial soldiers now arrived, brazen-faced, demanding Sinbad hand over the acquired power and treasures. Seeing his refusal, the soldiers attempted to forcibly seize them by violence. Just then, Yunan's voice was heard. Observing that Sinbad was without knowing how to use the djinn's power, Yunan proceeded to teach him the method. Sinbad resolved the soldiers on the scene with the thunderous power unleashed by the djinn. Yunan then thoughtfully escorted Sinbad back to his village, knowing Ezra was nearing her end, so he could see her one last time. During Sinbad's 2-month absence, Esra's condition had worsened severely. She was now delirious, even mistaking Sinbad for his father, recalling the cherished memories of their family of 3. Perhaps this was divine will. If Esra hadn't passed away, she might have bound him to remain in that small village. News of Sinbad conquering the dungeon soon spread throughout the nation. To the common people, he was a hero, but the Empire was deeply displeased. His act of resistance further branded him a traitor. The princess herself led soldiers to capture him. Sinbad subdued her effortlessly, publicly hoisted her onto his shoulder, and took her hostage aboard his ship. The princess feared he might harm her, but Sinbad placed her inside a barrel and cast her into the sea, instructing her to wait for the soldiers to retrieve her before departing coolly. Thus, Sinbad, now alone, embarked on his adventures. After he conquered the first dungeon, new dungeons began appearing across the world. People craved the immense power within them, ushering in the age of dungeon conquest. Yet Sinbad, the pioneer, was currently enduring extreme cold. Suddenly, a massive wave erupted from the sea. An enormous dragon surged through the water towards a pair of siblings. The brother, wielding a harpoon, tried to confront it but was knocked into the sea by a powerful tail swipe. he fled desperately with his sister. To protect his unconscious sister, he lured the dragon away alone and prepared to strike it down with his harpoon. Yet, as he aimed his final blow, the dragon's terrifying glare drained his strength, causing him to miss. Seeing the sister in peril, Sinbad arrived just in time aboard a small boat. Raising his sword high, he summoned the jinn to unleash its thunderous power. With a lightning strike, the dragon was instantly cooked partially through. He then towed its carcass to the shore. When the awakened sister witnessed this, she mistakenly attributed the feat to her brother, feeling both thrilled and proud, believing this would earn him the tribe's recognition. Sinbad introduced himself to the girl, but his flirting unexpectedly didn't work on her because she was a brother Khan. Her name was Pipirika, and her brother was Hina-Ho-Ho. They lived in a tribe covered by ice and snow, where men were universally large in build, while women were beautiful and virtuous. Led by the siblings, Sinbad arrived at this tribe named Imuchak. The person before them now was the chieftain, also the father of the two siblings. Hearing his son had successfully hunted the dragon, the chieftain promptly began making arrangements to host a banquet celebrating Hina-Ho-Ho becoming a capable warrior. Meanwhile, the Empire assigned Drakon a special unit to redeem himself. These were all highly trained assassins, and Drakon was ordered to lead them in seizing Sinbad's sacred artifacts. Since they had already tracked his whereabouts, Drakon trailed him all the way to this location. During conversation, they learned unknown structures had appeared near the tribe. The chieftain planned to send people to investigate, but Sinbad, having personal experience, knew rashly entering a dungeon meant certain death. At first, the chieftain didn't believe him until Sinbad drew his sword, proving he was a dungeon conqueror. The group was stunned by this power. The chieftain instantly changed his demeanor and even offered a toast to apologize to Sinbad. Seeing the powerful and composed Sinbad, Hina-Ho-Ho's pride was wounded. He knew he currently lacked the qualifications to be a warrior. Subsequently, the celebratory banquet began. Everyone gathered around the bonfire, singing and dancing. Sinbad also experienced the exotic customs. After the banquet ended, while he was sound asleep having pleasant dreams, Imperial assassins stealthily infiltrated the room. The commotion inside the room caught the attention of Hina-Ho-Ho and others. Seeing his opponent was still a child, Sinbad lowered his guard and was then subdued on the ground by a surprise attack. Just as the assassin looked triumphant, Sinbad calmly smiled. Then his sword released lightning that electrocuted the opponent unconscious. Sinbad subsequently lectured and criticized him. Doing such things at such a young age, wasn't he afraid of hurting his parents? Jafar self-mockingly revealed he had killed them when he was 6. Sinbad deemed Jafar pitiful, and his sympathetic gaze angered the latter. Jafar pulled out a blade and cut Sinbad's face. Suddenly, a smoke bomb dropped inside the room, and Jafar's companion seized the chance to rescue him. Though Sinbad knew they came to assassinate him, he wasn't afraid. After all, he was the man who would change this world. Sinbad's words moved Hina-Ho-Ho, who secretly made a resolve. Later, while Sinbad was resting by the fire, Pipirika frantically ran to inform him. To prove himself, Hina-Ho-Ho had gone alone to challenge the dungeon. He wanted to gain the power within it to become as strong as Sinbad. Learning this, Sinbad resolutely decided to bring Hina-Ho-Ho back. Pipirika worried he might not return alive either, but with unwavering eyes, Sinbad declared he would not die. At this moment, Hina-Ho-Ho had already arrived at the dungeon's entrance. Stepping inside, all the crystals instantly illuminated, surrounding him with breathtaking scenery like a fairyland. Sinbad had also reached the outside of the dungeon, with Yunnan observing him from behind. Yunnan expressed great anticipation, wondering what kind of story would unfold as Sinbad was drawn to the dungeon's power once more. To obtain kingly power, one must possess kingly caliber. This young man before them had come alone to challenge the dungeon merely to prove himself, and he was captivated by its beautiful scenery. Yet the more enchanting the place, the more dangerous it proved to be. Unexpectedly, these were cannibal butterflies. Hina-Ho-Ho recoiled in terror, but the sheer number of butterflies was overwhelming, engulfing his entire body in an instant. He only avoided being devoured by leaping into the water. After barely climbing back out, he hadn't gone far before discovering a large gate, but just as he prepared to step towards it, the ground suddenly trembled. He had stepped on a giant crab monster. Hina-Ho-Ho reacted swiftly and broke its leg. but was slammed into the water by one of its claws. This crab monster was the gate's guardian. Only by defeating it could one obtain the key. Under Hinahoho's strike, the crab monster lost one large claw. Hinahoho then lifted the crab monster and slammed it heavily to the side. Yet, as he readied to deliver the fatal blow, Hinahoho faltered with fear, just like when he first encountered the dragon. As he stood frozen, a large sword flew past, finishing off the crab monster. Turned out the Empire's forces had also entered the dungeon. They directly ignored Hinahoho nearby and picked up the crystal on the ground. Dracon, having experience, knew it was the key to unlock the gate. The group completely disregarded Hinahoho. Feeling humiliated beyond endurance, he charged forward angrily, knocking two of them flying, unleashing the true power of his clan. Seeing this, the Imperial assassins ceased holding back. Mahad punched the ground, shattering it. Vitel extended an arm, binding Hinahoho. Immediately after, Hinahoho was securely restrained by the rope dart shot by Jafar. Several lightning bolts repelled the crowd. Sinbad had come to take Hinahoho back but unexpectedly crossed paths with Dracon. Just as the two were amiably catching up, Jafar couldn't wait to take revenge. Because of Sinbad's lecture the previous day, Jafar now harbored deep hatred for him. The other two also provoked and distracted Hinahoho. In an unguarded moment, Sinbad became ensnared by a rope dart. Since gaining the power of the Jinn Baal, Sinbad had improved in various aspects, and his intuition had become exceptionally sharp. Thus, he anticipated Jafar's attack. However, Hinahoho's situation was far from optimistic. He took a direct punch to the chest from Mahad. Seeing this, Sinbad tried to unleash lightning to save him, but was interrupted by Dracon. Seizing this opportunity, Jafar attempted to ambush Sinbad again. Hinahoho rushed over and saved him, then hastily dragged him into the water. Faced with this, Dracon and the others were helpless. But the female mage used ice magic to freeze the river. Fortunately, Hinahoho swam swiftly and managed to evade with Sinbad. At this moment, Dracon and his group had already opened the gate and entered the dungeon's treasure vault. Dracon touched the necklace, beating the protagonist to it, and summoned the Jinn Valafor. However, the Jinn soon detected a pungent foul odor and sensed an anomaly among them. With a mere clench of its hand, the female mage beside them was instantly crushed. It turned out she was merely a puppet, remotely controlled by her true self residing in the Empire. The Jinn then asked who among them wished to become king. Dracon immediately stepped forward and answered. Upon hearing he intended to bring the king's power back as an offering to the king, the Jinn immediately lost interest. It transformed into a lazy raccoon dog, expressing disappointment in Dracon. It declared that those lacking kingly caliber were unworthy of possessing kingly power. At this moment, Sinbad and Hinahoho also arrived. Seeing all challengers assembled, the Jinn decided to prepare a trial for them. Whoever passed would have an opportunity to receive the kingly power it bestowed. Upon hearing this, everyone laid claim without hesitation, each revealing their own ambition. Sinbad, who already possessed one Jinn, also intended to compete against the others. Seeing everyone brimming with ambition excited the Jinn. It released its miniature clone, a small cat. Whoever caught this kitten first would pass the trial and gain kingly power. They complained this seemed too simplistic, but things weren't that easy. If no one caught it before the sand in the hourglass ran out, everyone would be trapped in the dungeon forever. Jafar struck first, but the cat's agile movements, combined with their desperate eagerness to seize it, made capture impossible. The Jinn mocked humanity for being this way since ancient times. Then the calm Sinbad stepped forward. He argued that continuing like this, no one would catch the cat, and all would perish trapped inside. He proposed they cooperate, surrounding the cat from different directions and finally pouncing together. Whoever caught it, the others must not resent it. For fairness, Sinbad voluntarily stepped back to give the command, stating he already possessed one Jinn and escaping alive was now paramount. Since he put it this way, they reluctantly accepted his proposal. Time was running out. Everyone held their breath waiting for the command.
Get him!
They realized Sinbad had tricked them, but without this method, all would remain unable to leave the dungeon. For under the Jinn's temptation, Dracon and the others had succumbed to their own desires. Sinbad declared if someone must obtain the kingly power, that person would undoubtedly be him. He would use this power to change the world and establish a nation where people coexist peacefully. An inexplicable emotion surged within them. Sinbad's words stirred their hearts profoundly. What originally sounded like a pipe dream began to make them slowly believe he could achieve it.
I ask all of you, create that country with me!
Sinbad demonstrated exceptional leadership. Dracon recognized this as kingly caliber. Ultimately, swayed by Sinbad's impassioned declaration of ambition, even the Empire's assassins wavered. Jafar even prepared to shake hands with him. But just as they were about to touch, Jafar seized the opportunity to stab Sinbad. However, Sinbad showed no anger. His sincerity moved Jafar. Yet, large amounts of black liquid began gushing from Jafar's body. His two companions were similarly affected. The cause was the healing potion administered by the female mage earlier upon entering the dungeon. She was manipulating everything from behind the scenes. At this moment, dark energy continuously surged from the trio's bodies. Converging together, it formed a magic beast. Seeing this, Dracon wanted to kill the three preemptively, but Sinbad stopped him, refusing to abandon his comrades. Soon, a fully formed magic beast emerged, punching Sinbad several meters away. The jinn discerned that this creature operated by connecting living humans it absorbed to its core, drawing power from their magic. Destroying the core on its chest could save the three. Sinbad, Hina-Ho-Ho, and Dracon then coordinated an attack. Hina-Ho-Ho endured the beast's assault. Dracon tried to strike its head but was punched away. Seizing the opportunity, Sinbad severed one of the beast's arms. Just as he prepared to unleash lightning, the severed arm snatched away his weapon. Then the beast reattached its severed limb. At this moment, the Empire's female mage reappeared. Holding Sinbad's weapon, she triumphantly revealed her identity to everyone. All of this had been orchestrated behind the scenes by Dracon's elder brother. Dracon himself was now a discarded pawn with no further value. Stunned by betrayal from his own kin and homeland, Dracon knelt on the ground in despair. Hina-Ho-Ho intervened just in time to save him but was immediately seized by the magic beast. Its crushing grip produced crunching sounds from Hina-Ho-Ho's skull. Sinbad grabbed a weapon from the ground to rescue him but was knocked down repeatedly. Yet inspired by Sinbad's perseverance, Hina-Ho-Ho finally erupted with strength, forcibly breaking the beast's arm. Hina-Ho-Ho was no longer timid. He wanted to repay Sinbad's kindness. Presently, only he could pierce the beast's core. Sinbad drew a dagger to distract the beast, while Hina-Ho-Ho remained in place, charging up for a big move. This time, Sinbad moved with extraordinary agility, effortlessly dodging the beast's furious punches. Witnessing this, the female mage panicked and used magic to immobilize Sinbad's legs. He was then clenched in the beast's fist, moments from being crushed to death when Dracon, his fighting spirit restored, rushed forward. He thrust his sword into the beast's skull, forcing it to release Sinbad in agony. Dracon vowed to fight no longer for the Empire and issued a bold proclamation to his brother. He would return alive to behead him and reclaim his beloved princess. The three then joined forces against the boss. Sinbad and Dracon grappled tightly with the beast while Hina-Ho-Ho, fully charged, hurled his spear with all his might. Seeing her magic beast defeated, the enraged female mage attempted to resist. But with one slash from Sinbad, she reverted to a wooden puppet. As the dark magic within the trio dissipated, they gradually regained consciousness. Just when it seemed resolved, Jafar suddenly underwent another drastic transformation. An even more terrifying surge of dark magic erupted from within him, resurrecting the magic beast, this time with Jafar as its core. Destroying the beast now would be tantamount to killing Jafar. Facing this terrifying surge of dark magic, Sinbad fearlessly thrust his hand into Jafar's body. The jinn urged him to stop immediately, as this burden was beyond human endurance. With a flash of white light, Sinbad entered Jafar's subconscious and witnessed his memories. He saw Jafar walking alone across a desolate wilderness within his mind. Jafar searched for his home and called out for his parents, but another personality forced him to confront reality. Jafar had been brainwashed by an organization since childhood. To mold him into an emotionless assassin, he was forced to kill his own parents. Since then, the conflict between these two personalities had trapped Jafar in perpetual agony. Sinbad's arrival shone like a ray of sunlight in the darkness, illuminating and offering Jafar redemption. At that moment, Sinbad's arm became covered in dragon scales. He raised his sword and summoned the power of lightning. Wreathed in a torrent of thunder, the dark magic within Jafar was forcibly expelled. Ultimately, Sinbad pulled him back from the abyss. From this very moment, Jafar pledged to follow this king unto death. The dungeon crisis was finally over. The survivors, having endured the ordeal, recognized Sinbad's worth even more profoundly. Witnessing the scene, the jinn couldn't help but sigh with emotion. It then reverted to its true form and once again posed the question to the group, who will become the king? And now, the other 5 were wholeheartedly convinced.
King! Now is the time to form a pact with the jinn!
Thus, the 6th dungeon, Valafor, was completely conquered. Sinbad obtained his 2nd jinn. An equally massive pile of gold and treasures was also rewarded. Sinbad gifted it to Hinahoho's tribe. The chieftain planned to hold a feast for them. However, Draken chose to bid farewell alone. He prepared to return to the empire that had betrayed him, though he knew it was dangerous. There were people there he still had to protect. From the moment he decided to follow Sinbad, he had become a member of Sinbad's household. He could utilize a portion of Sinbad's power and the jinn's power, but currently, he was unaware of the household member power he possessed. After these events, Hinahoho also earned his tribe's recognition. He became a true warrior. He decided to follow Sinbad on adventures. He wished to create a new world together with him. His father felt deeply gratified by this. He permitted him to leave the Imachak tribe. Not only that, the king of this polar region also betrothed his daughter to him. Sinbad, meanwhile, signed a formal monopoly trade treaty with this nation. From then on, he was no longer just an adventurer, but also the master of a maritime trading company. The Sindria trading company he established would soon achieve world fame. On this day, he and his companions arrived at the Rame Empire. This was the world's largest center of economic trade. Everyone eagerly set up stalls to sell goods. The specialty products they brought from the polar region were rare commodities locally. Therefore, they were deeply cherished by the populace. Coupled with Sinbad's smooth talk, their business was booming. Just then, several soldiers interrupted their trade. The reason was that all commercial activities here were managed by the guild. Doing business without permission was prohibited. As everyone was at a loss, a cloaked man offered to buy all their goods. He promptly produced a large bag of silver coins. This was a timely rescue for the group, as unsold goods would become dead stock. But soon everyone realized they had been tricked. The cloaked man had resold all their goods, and he marked up the price a full 10 times higher. This way, they lost not only the profit margin, but, more importantly, the pricing power of their merchandise. Having been scammed upon their first arrival, everyone felt very discouraged. They also experienced the ruthlessness of the business world. However, Sinbad was fired up with fighting spirit. He found this battlefield without drawn blades quite intriguing. Subsequently, Hinahoho and the others returned to their tribe to procure new goods. Sinbad remained alone, devising a method to obtain the guild's permission. After all, he aimed to establish a country. Wealth and profits were the foundation of state building. Nations conquered by force have never endured throughout history. When encountering the man who had deceived him, Sinbad did not erupt in anger. Instead, he humbly sought business advice from the other party. He understood his own knowledge and experience were insufficient. Observing his greed yet composure, Rashid believed he had a knack for business. Rashid also wondered how he had secured the trade monopoly for the Polar Kingdom's goods. Sinbad thus used this as leverage in their conversation. He requested Rashid's assistance in obtaining Rame Empire's business license. He demonstrated the power of the Jinn Valafor. By proving himself as a dungeon conqueror, he recounted his labyrinth conquest experiences. Rashid was astonished upon hearing this. Learning that Sinbad's original motive for entering commerce was to build an ideal nation, Rashid was moved by his lofty ambition. Consequently, while agreeing to his request, Rashid presented Sinbad with a challenge: earn 1,000 gold coins within 1 month. This was a prerequisite for joining the guild. It was an amount unattainable for most people in a lifetime. Sinbad felt deeply perplexed. Even working non-stop for 24 hours a day, the money earned in a month would fall far short. At that moment, staring at his sword, he suddenly had a flash of insight. A month quickly passed. When Rashid returned to the location, he found crowds gathered. Curiously approaching, he saw Sinbad standing on a rooftop, sword in hand. Sinbad narrated his adventures as a story to the audience. These labyrinths were places where tens of thousands entered to challenge them, yet none returned. The scenery within resembled fairylands. But then a youth appeared. Overcoming countless hardships, he confronted a dragon capable of unleashing lightning. He bravely battled it. Just as the dragon's breath was about to touch his body, he pierced the dragon with his sword. Ultimately passing the dungeon trial, he gained the legendary Jinn's power, and this youth's name was Sinbad. Sinbad's vivid narration not only won the crowd's cheers, but also prompted everyone to tip him generously. Yet even so, the money earned still fell short of 1,000 gold coins. Sinbad earnestly pleaded for more time, but instead, Rashid ordered his subordinates to bring a bag of gold coins. This served as a tip for Sinbad, and Rashid took him as his disciple. Through this test, Rashid recognized Sinbad's enormous potential. At this moment, Sinbad also learned Rashid's true identity, the king of the Balbad Republic. Sinbad looked astonished, never expecting that he had become the disciple of a king. This man's name was Jafar. In the story's early stages, he served as an assassin antagonist. To eliminate the protagonist Sinbad, he stopped at nothing. Later, he was betrayed by his employer. He nearly underwent a fall, transforming into a magical creature. Ultimately, Sinbad risked his life to rescue him. Sinbad pulled him back from the abyss. From that moment onward, he vowed to follow Sinbad unto death. In the near future, he became one of Sinbad's 8 generals. He further served as chief affairs officer, assisting Sinbad in governing state matters. His education was credited to Hinahoho's wife, Rurumu. After Jafar abandoned his wicked ways, she forced him to study knowledge and etiquette daily. Having grown up in an assassination organization since childhood, being made to learn properly now felt more painful than killing him. Rurumu understood his feelings, while also knowing he accepted education to repay Sinbad's kindness. Rurumu's motherly affection gradually reformed Jafar. Suddenly, she collapsed to the ground in pain. She was about to give birth. Finally, Rurumu delivered a heavy-set boy. She frequently entrusted the child to Jafar's care, believing childcare was another form of learning. Except the child's size soon surpassed his own. Afterward, Hinahoho and others returned to their tribe to procure goods. They arrived at the Reem Empire again. Previously lacking a business license, they failed to conduct trade. Ultimately, they were even cheated. Yet after merely a short separation, Sinbad not only secured a business license but also founded the Sindria Trading Company. Seeing him so triumphant, everyone felt both shocked and puzzled. His mentor, Rashid, had suggested performing his adventures as a play for larger audiences. Audiences became utterly captivated by Sinbad's recounted adventures and the displayed power of the jinn. His name rapidly spread nationwide. People flocked continuously to watch his plays. Sinbad became an idol in people's hearts. Even the empire's largest arena ultimately became his stage. Thus, in merely a brief period, Sinbad earned enormous profits from theatrical performances. He established his trading company in the Rime Empire. Seeing Sinbad's professional success, Rashid bid farewell to return to his own country. Later, Sinbad compiled his adventures into a book, titled The Adventures of Sinbad. It gained immense popularity among readers. To form trade alliances with more nations, he and his companions embarked on new adventures. Sinbad arrived in the mountainous nation of Sasan. This land was abundant in iron and various minerals. If successful here, it would feel like endless sweetness within a giant honeycomb. However, the people here were very xenophobic. It was learned they had long maintained a policy of national isolation. They engaged in no trade with any country. Even establishing ordinary friendships required converting to their religion first. For Sasan was a religious nation devoted to its deities. Yet approval from the Knights King was mandatory. The royal knights he commanded were the absolute authority guiding the populace. But this man was aloof and exceedingly rigid. No matter how Sinbad greeted him, the Knights King ignored him. He shut Sinbad out. Yet his eldest son was entirely different. When the three arrived at a restaurant, they encountered a red-haired youth who was the Knights King's son. Mistras knew they were foreign travelers. He thus wanted to hear stories of the outside world. Due to Sasan's religious doctrines, no one was permitted to leave the country for years. Sensing Mistress's yearning for the outside world, Sinbad began an impromptu performance. He recounted his own adventure stories to him. Mistras was utterly amazed after hearing them. His existing reluctance to be a caged bird intensified his longing for the vast world beyond. The Knights King discerned his son's thoughts. He admonished Mistras not to forget his status. He was meant to inherit his position someday. But Mistress had long grown weary of this nation. He refused to be confined in these deep mountains for life. Mistress's extreme remarks earned him a slap from his father. Yet this did not extinguish the youth's thirst for adventure. He immediately turned and begged Sinbad to take him away. Sinbad agreed, but stated they couldn't leave secretly. Mistress intended exactly that. He planned to openly resign from the knights. The next day, just as the group went to check on Mistress, Yunnan suddenly appeared behind them. 2 years had passed since Yunnan guided Sinbad into his first dungeon. Yunnan had been observing him all along, aware he had obtained a second djinn. This time, Yunnan appeared to issue a warning. Now, besides Sinbad, many nations had individuals conquering dungeons and gaining djinn power. This included Sinbad's homeland, Parthivia, and this very kingdom of Sasan. That individual was the Night's King. Yunnan looked forward to the interesting events that would unfold when Sinbad encountered another conqueror. After speaking, Yunnan vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, Mistress had already defeated several knights. Although joining the knights meant dedicating oneself until death, there was one way to leave alive: defeat the Night's King. At the battle's start, Mistress launched a fierce offensive, momentarily gaining the upper hand. However, a regular player could never defeat a cheater. Activating his djinn power, the Night's King easily sent Mistress flying. The 50-second djinn he possessed, Aloces, had the ability of absolute defense, reflecting all enemy attacks. Mistress's attacks couldn't touch the Night's King. As a result, losing meant facing immediate execution.
Stop! Hold it right there!
Sinbad stepped forward to stop the Night's King. He then raised his sword and unleashed lightning power, revealing himself as a dungeon conqueror. He declared he would challenge the Night's King on Mistress's behalf, especially since the latter had just used djinn power against an ordinary person. Sinbad's provocation forced the Night's King to accept the challenge. Both possessing djinn power, the question remained, who would prevail? Initially, they engaged in blade combat. True to his title, the Night's King dominated, leaving Sinbad at a disadvantage. Sinbad then activated his djinn power, but his lightning attacks were effortlessly blocked and entirely reflected back. The Night's King's defense was impeccable, capable of both defending and reflecting damage. Observing soldiers remarked in awe that this youth could match the Night's King. Sinbad smiled confidently, stating that such a level couldn't be compared to his own. He then showed everyone his true form. This was Sinbad's dragon form after djinn equip, the state necessary to unleash a djinn's true power. He raised his sword and summoned lightning from the sky, piercing the roof and striking the Night's King directly. Even with his formidable defense, he crumbled before overwhelming force. When the smoke cleared, both figures were gone, leaving only a large hole in the roof. Sinbad had already flown into the air, carrying the Night's King for a private talk. But the Night's King resisted, so Sinbad threw him down from 10,000 meters high. After Sinbad landed, the Night's King, still unyielding, wanted to continue fighting. Sinbad felt helpless and made him experience the gap in their strength once more.
Balalak Saika!
Witnessing such fearsome, destructive power, the Night's King lost all will to fight. Sinbad could destroy his nation in an instant if he wished. Having not yet mastered djinn equip, the Night's King stood no chance. Sinbad revealed his purpose: to forge an alliance with the kingdom of Sasan through trade. He foresaw great upheaval coming to the world. More and more people were conquering dungeons and gaining power. This power would inevitably disrupt the world's balance, dragging nations into war. Sinbad wished to prevent this. He desired to build a nation where people could coexist peacefully. For this, he needed like-minded allies to help change the world. Sinbad's words reminded the Night's King of a Sasan myth. It told of a world once covered in defilement, until a deity arrived, dispelled it, and ultimately founded a utopia where all races coexisted. That deity was the Almighty King. Sensing Sinbad's will aligned with this ideal, the Night's King accepted the alliance proposal. Upon returning, he announced this to the nation. Though some questioned it, the Night's King explained both he and Sinbad were chosen messengers of the deities. Thus, all objections ceased. Finally, Mistress, representing the kingdom of Sasan, would accompany Sinbad on his voyage. Their next destination was the sky city of Artemyra, a nation ruled by women.
Isn't it great? Yes! Yes!
He was the man known as the King of the Seven Seas. He now sought to charm the queen before him with his looks, but such shallow tactics held no sway over the noble queen. In the end, he was stripped naked. That day, Sinbad and his companions sailed to the Canyon continent, seeking to establish a trade alliance with a small nation there. First, they had to traverse the towering canyon cliffs ahead. Inside, they encountered a large bird carrying two blonde girls. Delighted by rare visitors, the girls gave them a little reward.
If you think you can make it all the way to Artemira, come and find us and we'll show you a good time.
Ladies, we'll see you two later tonight.
After docking, Mistress and Sinbad eagerly headed for paradise. Though crossing the canyon proved difficult, the girls' encouragement sustained them. After an arduous night of climbing, they finally reached Artemira the next morning. Houses here were built on sheer cliffs, and residents traveled by riding giant birds, a breathtaking sight. With virtually only women present, it was indeed a paradise for men. Later, the group requested an audience with the queen. Guards escorted them into the palace, where Sinbad stated his purpose to the figure on the throne. Yet after speaking at length, the seated figure remained unresponsive, while a female guard beside her chuckled oddly. This guard stepped forward and discarded a doll, revealing herself as the true queen. She had deliberately let them suffer earlier because many visitors disrespected women. Learning that Rurumu hadn't come due to pregnancy, the queen refused to negotiate with the men and ordered them to leave. But Sinbad not only ignored this, he even attempted to charm the queen with his appeal.
Believe me, Your Excellency. It's true.
Yet the queen remained unmoved. In her eyes, men were merely tools for reproduction. She intended to make Sinbad understand the terrifying consequences of defying women in her nation. She ordered guards to surround the group. At that moment, their weapons resonated. Though recognizing Sinbad might differ from other men, the queen couldn't forgive his earlier offense. After seizing his sword, she had all their clothes stripped off, preparing to throw them into the Death Valley before them. The queen looked at the bound Haina Ho-Ho. She had heard that Imuchak men were exceptionally strong, so she decided to keep him for thorough study. The three who fell into the canyon found the cliffs covered in moss, making climbing impossible. For some time afterward, they lived like primitive beings, as if regressed to monkeys. They experimented with countless ways to cook snake meat. Ultimately, they discovered that to obtain wild gemstones from the canyon, people from the kingdom dropped large chunks of raw meat, which giant birds then retrieved with gemstones attached. Sinbad and his companions hid inside the raw meat, using this method to successfully return to the top. The girls, terrified and thinking they had seen ghosts, fled in panic. After borrowing clothes from nearby workers, Sinbad decided to revisit the queen to retrieve his sword. He infiltrated her bedchamber at midnight. Though the queen was prepared, Sinbad only stealthily reclaimed his sacred weapon. Humiliated for the first time by a man, the queen drew her spear, ready to fight. She possessed the 24th jinn, Cerberus. Facing the queen's full jinn equip, Sinbad had no choice but to get serious, transforming directly into his dragon form to confront her. The two clashed in the air, their lightning attacks canceling each other out. Seeing that matching attributes yielded no victor, Sinbad summoned his second jinn. Chanting an incantation, he switched to an alluring nine-tailed fox form. A sinister halo radiated from the demonic eye in Sinbad's palm. Observing no damage, the queen mocked him for bluffing, snatched her staff and charged. During their clash, Sinbad countered with a hail cannon, but even a direct hit left the queen unscathed. Her jinn equip combined ice, lightning, and fire attributes, equivalent to possessing 3 sets simultaneously. The ice attack had been nullified. Her primary fire attribute was the strongest. Swinging her flaming staff, she struck directly at Sinbad. Sinbad barely dodged. Before he could catch his breath, the queen unleashed 3 gigantic hellhounds, engulfing him instantly.
It's a little early to celebrate, Your Excellency.
The queen had no idea how Sinbad managed it, but his strength earned her recognition. She no longer held back, directly fusing ice, lightning, and fire attributes to unleash her ultimate attack. However, she was interrupted mid-charge. She was utterly baffled as to how Sinbad had gotten behind her. She swore her eyes had been locked on him the entire time. The queen attacked again, only for Sinbad to evade once more with an instantaneous movement. No matter how she struck afterward, Sinbad dodged every attack with ease. Fear gripped the queen as she realized their strength existed on entirely different dimensions. This was the stagnation ability of the Jinn Valifor, which limited the movement of matter. When this ability was applied to the queen, her actions became drastically slowed, yet she remained completely unaware of it. Thus, Sinbad toyed with her effortlessly. He ended the battle by freezing her solid. Following this event, the queen was utterly conquered. It was the first time a man had defeated her. She was also won over by Sinbad's charisma, leading her to acknowledge him. The next day, she proactively summoned Sinbad and agreed to form a trade alliance with him. During their subsequent conversation, Sinbad heard for the first time about the legendary great magician, Magi. He learned that within the Magi stronghold, the Rime Empire, resided a Magi who had lived for 200 years. It was said the dungeons appearing worldwide were summoned by the Magi to select those possessing the capacity to be king. Sinbad suddenly remembered Yunnan, who had guided him before, realizing this person was the original Magi. After concluding their business, the three prepared to return to the trading company, forgetting one person, Hinahoho, who had been captured earlier by the girls for study. At this moment, he was clearly completely exhausted. As good brothers, Sinbad reminded him that he apparently still had a wife. Mistress envied this immensely, since it was something he dreamed of experiencing. Finally, when the group prepared to leave, the queen sent Palkia as their representative escort. She also requested that her daughters receive their care in the future, though the sheer number was truly astonishing.
Actually, I have one more daughter.
This was the youngest daughter, named Pisti. She would later accompany Sinbad on adventures and become one of his 8 generals. After bidding farewell, the group boarded giant birds and departed the Kingdom of Women, returning to the Rame Empire. During their absence, thanks to the management by Rurumu and the other two, the Sindria Trading Company operated smoothly. Now with 2 new companions, they were immersed in the joyful atmosphere when undercurrents began stirring quietly. The world's structure was about to undergo massive changes. Meanwhile, Sinbad's follower Dracon was currently fleeing with a princess. Fate would once again draw Sinbad into these events, and all raging storms would converge upon him. Although the anime concluded here, Sinbad's adventures continued.